You are now listening to the Masters Mehan podcast. Episode 13. The 13, Illuminati, Bloodlines. This episode may be deemed inappropriate for some listeners. If you have been abused or are a minor, you should stop now. This episode builds on the previous ones. The family histories we are about to illuminate and summarize can be difficult to fully validate. Luciferians live in mythos and work hard to create a personal and family story that screams of the unique and fantastical. In short, they make up family conquests and rags to riches stories to hide their true origins and benefactors, as well as to push their master's agenda. You are going to see plenty of examples of what we are trying to say by that.
One small step for man.
We are, as a people, opposed to secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret machines. And we are opposed around the world by a
Before that time
conspiracy
must be the work of the
relies
devil.
primarily on covet means.
Well, join me. I'm glad to sit here at the right hand of Satan.
The vision of Joel has been fulfilled.
So the name of this project is FunVax.
We don't just need more money for vaccines for children eventually. We need more money to plan for the second pandemic. There's going to be another pandemic.
We'll eliminate this behavior. And we
I
believe
am
that's
Governor
that's
Spencer
the way to
Cox,
get
and my preferred
exposure
pronouns are
to
he,
large
him, his.
population.
Do you think the first gay president or the first woman
We already
president?
have it with Obama, so let's just calm down. Michelle is a transgender. We all know.
And so we eat the blood of our enemy.
But you know, there's quite an awakening coming.
Let's explore some worldwide genealogical history by stepping into the darkness. Or as some Luciferians trigger, it's a small world, after all.
It's a world of witchcraft, a world of sins. It's a world of corrupt, dirty politicians. There's so much to destroy, that's the work we employ. It's a dark world after all. It's a cruel world after all. It's a vile world after all. It's corrupt world after all. It's a wicked, 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 wicked world.
In a mockery of Jesus Christ's 12 apostles, which are a symbol of the original 12 sons of Father Israel, Lucifer established 13 official bloodlines to oversee his committee of 300, who have been charged with preparing the entire planet to openly crown him as king of the world, post-Christianity. Satan has mentored and prepared these 13 families for many centuries. Each of these 13 have a head patriarch, which we would call a high wizard. These imagine that they are dragons, and so they imagine dragons. A dragon, real or imagined, is a snake with legs. Now hear this warped sermon or confession.
When the days are cold and the cards are folding, the saints we see are all made of gold. I wanna hide the truth, I wanna shelter you, but with the beast inside, there's nowhere we can hide. No matter what we breed, we still are made of greed. This is my kingdom come, this is my kingdom come. When you pull my key, look into my eyes, it's where my demons hide, it's where my demons lights fade out, all the sinners crawl. So they dug your grave and the masquerade will come calling out at the mess you made. Don't wanna let you down, but I am hellbound. Oh, this is all for you. Don't wanna hide the truth.
Recently, the lead singer of this group admitted that he had taken a blood oath with the Illuminati in exchange for power, fame, and money. This song says exactly all of that and gives some insight into what it is like for an insider who knows that his inserted demon can be seen in his eyes, especially when he is in the heat of sex. Are you starting to see it? He did it for the power, but he is starting to understand that what he has gained here will be his only kingdom come on earth. But earth life is fleeting, particularly as you get older.
They say it's what you make, I say it's up to fate. It's woven in my soul, I need to let you go. When you in my ear, look into my eyes, it's where my demons hide, it's where my demons hide. Don't get too close, it's dark inside, it's where my demons hide, it's where my demons hide.
This imagined dragon is starting to understand what Queen Elizabeth II of England recently discovered. Lucifer cannot and will not support his children after death. And you can't take anything but your hell-bound soul with you. When the head patriarch of the bloodline dies, their position as king is passed down to another head male who then sits on the family throne until he dies and the cycle continues. Most of these attempt to extend their lives into immortality if possible with adrenochrome, and this hence is the beginning of the mythology of the vampire. Before beginning, it is important to understand that these families have a deep and vested interest in hiding their true origins and motivations. They have paid marketers and historians millions to invent mythos about them. Most of these family mythoses are rag-to-riches stories of hard work in following the American dream. In this, they are exactly like Scrooge McDuck.
Bah! Humbug!
The process became easier for them when the world fully embraced fiat currency instead of a gold or silver standard. Today, they can print money on demand and give it to whomever they want to make rich.
What's this world coming to, Cratchit? You work all your life to get money, and people want you to give it away.
More on that at another time. In this episode, we will use the Springmeier occult genealogical categorizations as it is one of the clearest to understand. Let's take the 13 bloodlines in brief, with some limited commentary. Consider this a primer on the rich and powerful, with more to come as we continue. These are the bloodlines who are attempting to run, and may very soon actually run, the entire world. Part 1. The Astor Bloodline. The original father of the American Astor fortune was John Jacob Astor, born 1763 and died in 1884. He was born into a Jewish bloodline in Waldorf, Baden, the Dukedom of Germany. Researchers will find also many conflicting stories about the Astor's origins, that it will become quickly obvious to everyone that they are dealing with secrets that the family wants to keep hidden. In 1784, John Jacob came to America after first stopping in England for instruction. There, he was tasked with increasing British control over the states since they were still terribly embarrassed after the American Revolution. Thus began the myth that he arrived penniless, but was quickly embraced as a Mason, where he rapidly rose in rank to be the head of the New York Holland Lodge No. 8. This was one of the lodges tasked by the Illuminati with infiltrating all American Masonry. American Masonry was not originally Illuminati-controlled, like much of it was in Europe. And here we see evidence of the first myth. Lodge number 8 spoke English and was composed of important, wealthy New Yorkers. Yet we are told to believe that shortly after J.J. arrived in New York penniless and unable to speak any English, he was promoted to headmaster of an important Masonic lodge of wealthy English speakers. Sure. The European lodges believed that they were the reincarnation of deep Egyptian mysteries. More on this at another time. Those who knew J.J. personally always said that he was a strange and cruel man. Even those friendly to him said that he was cold-hearted, had no charm or wit at all. As an example, one associate said that at a dinner party for some of the richest men in America, J.J. discovered that he needed a clean napkin for his dirty hands. So, instead of requesting a new one, he would just wipe his filthy paws on the shirt of anyone sitting next to him. Despite all kinds of rude things like this, he would rise higher and higher in Masonic circles. Astor quickly got into real estate and before long was given a special dispensation to sail cargo despite American embargoes. In 1807, the United States government placed an embargo on all U.S. sailing ships, except for Astor's. He made around $200,000 profit in 1800s money. That's millions by today's standard. He took in even more profits during the War of 1812, which crippled almost all other Americans. John would expand into Chinese opium, where he would make another fortune. Opium is a drug that can best be used to make morphine to lower human pain, but at worst, it can create an altered state in humans and was the first form of ancient pharmakia, which means drugs in English, which means sorcery in Greek. Wizards and witches cast spells on dopes through sorcery. This seems like magic to the dope, but the fact was that they merely drugged him. To a man in pain, receiving a special potion to ease his pain was an act of powerful sorcery from a powerful wizard or witch. Today, we have taken their pharmakia, drugs, sorcery, and created Big Pharma, the grand sorcery, worth billions. J.J. constantly fought to create monopolies, one of the means in which the Illuminati want to set up their New World Order Zion Utopia by controlling all means of human production and resources, the full meaning of John's Mark of the Beast. Before long, J.J. took over the entire American fur trade and built Astoria, Oregon on the Pacific coast to deal with his monopoly. Such would later become the model for Chinese forced labor factory cities, which they plan to return us in the United States to someday. He was always a major stockholder in the primarily British-owned Bank of the United States, the forerunner to our Federal Reserve. Britain still controls our banking system, even though most Americans don't know it.
Britannia rule the waves.
Other families who have married into this bloodline are the Roosevelts, the Backhouses, and the Force family.
May the Force be with you.
It was FDR, or Roosevelt, who illuminated American greenbacks so as to place a on them, and on Americans wishing to buy and sell with one of the many marks. The Astors were members and supporters of the Order of the Knights of the Helmet, the Rosicrucians, the Naughty Hellfire Club, and the Order Saturnus, a very ancient secret society that worshipped Saturn as god. We will have more on this. The Li bloodline. The Li family of China are the only known Oriental family in the illuminated 13 bloodlines. The Asian races descend from Noah's son Shem, and so claim special authority over the rest of the human family because Noah declared Shem to be his heir in terms of heavenly authority. The Chinese have been paramount in the Illuminati drug trade. Their national move to communism, by killing off their ruling houses in favor of Illuminati patsies, matches Tsarist Russia's history in ways impossible to ignore. Those emperors and kings that they have been unable to control have been forcefully removed by mobs. This started with the French Revolution. The Illuminati needs the Li family because since the Communist Chinese Revolution, they have needed a race that they can experiment on. The people of China have paid a heavy price for this. The Chinese Illuminati families today have been set up to believe that they will be allowed to conquer the United States and rule both sides of the Pacific at a future time. What they don't yet understand is that the British royal crown will betray them.
Rule, Britannia, Britannia, rule always.
When the United States defaults on her debts to England. They are planning that since America will fear a Chinese invasion, we will run to the British, since they believe we would rather resubmit to England than be controlled by the Red Chinese.
Britain never, never, never shall be saved.
They will be mistaken on both these fronts. This would have happened already by now, except that Americans own too many guns, and the American military is still too homegrown. This is why internally, we are constantly attacking both our military and our citizens' private gun rights. The Bundy bloodline. The Illuminati Bundy line have placed themselves as advisors to national leaders worldwide. In America, they were included on many unofficial and official councils since the Americans were forced to accept fiat currency and maritime law
Britannia rule always.
in stages after Lincoln's murder. We will have more on this. The best-known Bundy is, of course, mass murderer Theodore Bundy. One can't indoctrinate multiple generations of children in satanic torture and not occasionally have one snap on the public scene. A careful study of Theodore's life, the parts that haven't been scrubbed, gives you the clues. Bundys are heavily involved in the Skull and Bones clubs and have advised U.S. presidents at key historical moments from war to assassinations. Next time you study unwhitewashed history, perk up your ears and keep an eye out for Bundys in high offices, especially behind the scenes. They pull the strings for those they are ordered to puppet. The Kennedy bloodline. The Luciferian Kennedys are more difficult to trace, as not all Kennedys are Illuminati. There are upwards of 300,000 Kennedys in the US. It is the 15th most popular name in Ireland. The Kennedy family descends from Brian Kennedy, whose bloodline is sought after in Illuminati circles. The most famous Kennedy in America is, of course, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States. Today we know a tremendous amount about President Jack and his brother Bobby, how they were raised, and all of the hedonistic things that their father taught them to do. From the many biographies written about them, we know that their father, Joseph Patrick Kennedy, was not a nice man. Somehow, your clue to mythos. Joe Kennedy was made an important bank president by the age of 25, one of the youngest men ever to become such. He became a multi-millionaire as a result of taking short positions following the 1929 stock market crash, which he somehow knew was coming. When movie making started in California, Joe tried desperately to monopolize the industry. He made huge profits from reorganizing and refinancing several Hollywood film studios. He would later merge with Cecil B. DeMille's distribution company. He was unsuccessful in his attempts to take over Universal Pictures, but was able to force Greek-American Alexander Pantages to sell his empire to him. When Joe first approached him with an offer to buy him out at $126 million in today's money, Alexander turned him down. So Joe got him accused of being a rapist, and after Alexander's reputation was crushed, Joe offered him less than half the original amount, and he took it. Pantages, who claimed that Kennedy had set him up, was later found not guilty, and the girl who had accused him of rape, Eunice Pringle, confessed on her deathbed that Kennedy had masterminded the entire plot to frame Pantages and take over his empire. In Hollywood, the Kennedy men were big into the casting couch, with both father and sons trying out the various actresses before putting them on the screen. Joe ultimately formed RKO Pictures and made a huge amount of money. Some of his most successful distribution deals came from Walt Disney's cartoons and animated features, the same ones that are used in mind control programming.
Oh boy!
Joe Kennedy's power and deals go on and on. We will have more about him at another time, but in terms of our discussion here, after his mafia connections successfully bought his son the presidency, he had a major stroke a mere 11 months later. God is very quick these days. It paralyzed his right side, then shortly after he lost much of his speech, but not his mind. With therapy he did improve somewhat, but was never again the powerhouse he had been before. It seems that with him so incapacitated, Jack and Bobby were at last free to be the men they wanted to be. We do know that Jack was murdered shortly after he exposed the Illuminati in a national speech, and then declared that the United States was going to attach its wealth to silver and end America's use of the British-controlled Federal Reserve banking system, which is owned by the Illuminati. This is the real reason that Jack and Bobby later were murdered. Here is a portion of the speech where President Kennedy, in an attempt to be true to his oath of office, to protect our republic, betrayed the Illuminati to warn his country. This is the speech that cost him his life.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
More on this at another time. The Freeman bloodline. Of the very many Freemans who stand as advisors to the elected presidents and generational tyrants, male and female on the earth, the most important historically was Gaylord Freeman. European crusades into the Holy Lands and the Prairie de Zion was brought about because the occult understands that if John the Revelator is to be understood correctly, there was supposed to be some renewing of God's power on the earth around 1000 AD. They sought to control this moment on earth by controlling both Christianity and Jerusalem. The occult further understands that earlier Christianity leaned on the apostles and the greater family of Jesus Christ for its original leaders. The Bible has preserved for us the truth that Jesus had half-brothers and sisters. In other words, Mary had other children after she gave birth to the Lord. Theologically, non-Catholic Christians have no problem with this because they know that Jesus was sent to dwell among us and be as one of us in his humanity. A large part of this was for him to set an example to us in all things, as how we were to pick up our cross and follow him back to the Father and back to redemption. This included how we were to act in terms of family and siblings. When the Roman Catholic Church chose to crush all secular Christianity and bring it under the head of what we call the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, much of the attempt was to try and set up Rome to be God's choice for John's sixth seal. To wax Roman, they were soon hoisted upon their own Picard and had to invent dogma to justify their understandings and corruptions of Christianity. One of these was the destruction of any mention of the Lord's greater half family through his mother Mary. More on this soon. In order to control the world, Catholic and powerful Jews created La Prairie de Zion. Today, this organization is mocked openly by the occult in order to keep it and its histoire hidden. The ancient organization does exist. In short, its goal is very simple. They plan to return Jerusalem to its ancient, Noahic status as capital of the world and place their version of the heir of King David on the throne as king of the New World Order. Here is Walter Cronkite saying exactly that before the modern incarnation of the same Poirie.
You know that we have come to the point of our really being here this evening, and that is to honor with the Norman Cousins Global Governance Award, Walter Cronkite.
Even as with the American rejection so many years ago now of the League of Nations after World War I, our failure to live up to our obligations to the United Nations is led by a handful of willful senators they pander to and are supported by the Christian Coalition and the rest of the religious right wing. That we should have a world government, but only when the Messiah arrives. Any attempt to achieve world order before that time must be the work of the devil. Well, join me. I'm glad to sit here at the right hand of Satan.
The Freeman bloodline believes that they hold David's blood, but they are not the only Illuminati bloodline to think that. When they meet up with a contact within their greater coven, or someone that they didn't know was a part of their greater secret combination, sometimes the code of greeting will be, "It's a small world after all." Back through the water curtain. We will explore more Illuminati bloodlines of the 13 in Part 2. But bear in mind that it is unfair and indeed inaccurate to assume that everyone who shares an Illuminati last name are members of the occult. It is common for newbies just learning the scope of this evil to see a Satanist hiding behind every bush.
I've spoken of 1,000 points of light.
While sometimes there is, one must not assume that. Many have escaped their heritage. often at great personal expense. And so before assuming there is a Satanist lurking behind your family tree, it is wise to look for compelling validation of such by watching for more than one indication, such as the ones we have been providing in this podcast. Don't assume that your neighbor is totally a wicked witch. But, when in doubt, don't let them babysit, and cancel any of your kids' sleepovers at their house. You might be surprised to learn how often those are used to program another's children. Fair use claim. We are claiming fair use for the items in this podcast in which we do not own the copyright. United States law allows us to use items copyrighted by others in this podcast without their permission in the manner that we have under fair use. American courts have ruled that using another's copyrighted items in this manner is crucial when commenting and illustrating subject matter. Otherwise, news and commentary in the public discourse would be hindered, which is a violation of our constitutional rights, including our freedom of speech and freedom of the press, etc. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
The Masters Mayhem podcast will continue.
You are now listening to the Masters Mayhem podcast. Episode 14. The 13 Illuminati Bloodlines Continued, Part 2. This episode may be deemed inappropriate for some listeners. If you have been abused or are a minor, you should stop now. This episode builds on the previous ones. The family histories we have been illuminating and summarizing can be difficult to fully validate. Luciferians live in and work hard to create such that screams of the unique and fantastical. In short, they make up family conquests and rags to riches stories to hide the truth as well as to push their god, Lucifer's, agenda. There are too many examples of this to share. But, when in doubt, remember the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
Now this is where I was born. I was born in Kenya.
Unless we take the action necessary and we build in a greener and more sustainable and more inclusive way, then we will end up having more and more pandemics and disasters from ever-accelerating global warming and climate change.
Wise leaders always put the good of their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots.
We will never let radical socialists destroy our economy, wreck our country.
Here in Israel, they're making this green passport where the population cannot get into theaters or malls or all sorts of things. They're creating a medical apartheid.
There would be an enormous economic collapse prior to the revealing. The stock market would destabilize. It would make the Great Depression look like Sunday school.
Let's continue with our exploration of the worldwide 13 desecrated bloodlines, using the Springmeier genealogical classification by hurrying to our assignment in an adrenalized haze, or as the Luciferians trigger their minions. You're late for a very
important beat. No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late.
We really shouldn't be doing this. After all, we haven't been invited, and curiosity often leads to trouble.
Luciferians need you to believe 100% in rags to riches, so that they can keep you.
Follow the rainbow over the stream. Follow a fellow who follows a dream. Follow, 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 follow the yellow brick road.
So we can all keep our date with.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. We hear he is a whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever a whiz there was.
The Wizard of Oz is one because.
Because of the wonderful things he does. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Now, this is not to say that hard work doesn't pay off. It can and really used to, particularly before Karl Marx's progressive income tax. Karl Marx was a Rothschild. The goal there was to always keep you in enough debt that you would always have to stay on the road. If you are progressively punished for leaving the road, you will always stay poor enough to keep being distracted and to keep obeying until you're too old and need to retire. Busy, distracted people don't have time to do anything but continue to make their Illuminati overlords and landlords rich.
I'm late for a very important date. No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late.
Do you see how it works? Since our Father God's promise to humanity that a hero son would be born as one of us to save us, the occult, starting with Cain, have attempted to control and manipulate the bloodlines of humanity. The plan was to destroy any chance of the hero son being born as our lamb without spot. The entire Bible can be better understood when this is understood. After the successful birth of Jesus Christ, the need to safeguard bloodlines was ended. This began the church age, and the Lord's call to every nation and bloodline of man to come and partake in his universal blessing, regardless of status or race. Many Illuminati people escaped. But it was not until Nazi scientists started studying the miracle of the monarch butterfly that their minds really exploded in terms of DNA and its hereditary uses.
It's not easy being green.
From the monarch butterfly, the Nazis learned that it was possible to encode knowledge and traits into DNA. This could then be passed on to descendants as an integral part of their flesh. They were very eager to try this on humans. And since their leadership was Esau, the red dragon, they had a natural hatred for the children of Israel, their cousins. They were also very pleased to note that Jews by genetics have more twins than any other bloodline. Esau was Israel's twin, you remember. Twins are needed in human experiments because you instantly have a built-in control group. Thus began the horrors of swine pig Joseph Mengele under the Nazis. When Prescott Bush, father of George Herbert Walker Bush, helped bring Nazi scientists to the U.S., giving them different names.
It's not easy being green.
These experiments continued in what we today call monarch programming and MK Ultra. The monarch is code for the monarch butterfly, and the MK here is for Mind Control, with the control being German, in honor of the swine pig Fuhrer, who was also a Rothschild. Let's explore more bloodlines in part 2. The Collins bloodline. The Collins bloodline made their money primarily through insurance companies and international money exchanging. It is said that they were the first Illuminati bloodline to come to America, so their blood is held in very high esteem. It is said that in 1955, the grandmother of the High 13 was Mother Collins. They believed that she held more occult DNA than any other woman of the powerful 13. Those in the know said, the grandmother Collins dresses in black and sits upon an ebony and gold, moon-shaped throne. With a pedal at her foot, she can automatically rotate the throne so she can address the Grand Council of Wizards behind her without rising. Then she can rotate again to her lessers, groveling in front of her. The moon throne is, of course, a symbol of Zion, whom the ancients saw as the moon. The eyewitness continued saying that Grandmother Collins wore a great deal of jewelry. The men in attendance each placed a small gold brick at her feet as an offering. Directly behind her, on either side, stood 2 young Collins boys. It is said that one of these was John Todd Collins. These boys passed out timetables for various plans, and the meeting was all about furthering the one-world Zionist government mockery and what they had accomplished to date, as well as things that had gone wrong and how they might correct these mistakes next time. 7 children, dressed in white, were brought from generational satanic families and laid prostrate before Grandmother Collins, worshiping her. She had a scepter with a snake's head that had a battery inside and was basically a taser. This way she could bite those she touched with it, and it was considered magic. Once all 7 children were approved by her, 7 other children, less worthy, were brought in, and each one was sacrificed in front of the other 7, 1 for 1. Then the 7 remaining children had to write their names into the coven book with a quill, using their atoning child's blood for the ink. This was a blood oath.
Doesn't matter that I signed a blood oath. Doesn't matter anymore. The Illuminati's real. I'm a member.
The spared children then swore an oath to the mother, and she pressed her foot pedal and rotated to face the 13 high wizards. She declared, "This is tomorrow's chosen generation, the chosen few." The eyewitness then said that the Black John the Anti-Baptist entered to announce the coming of the Antichrist to the world. John Todd Collins, the boy who was reported there behind the mother, later had the courage to escape. He did this, as all who have successfully escaped do, by calling out to Jesus Christ for help. We'll let John speak for himself.
I come from a family where I grew up having my own heroes. My number one hero was my great, somewhere way back there, grandfather, named Francis Collins. Francis Collins owned the first ship that Puritans landed in here. It just so happened that 50% of the people on board were also witchcraft people fleeing from Scotland. And they were called the Collinses. They were all his family, and that's how all witchcraft came to the United States. So when I grew up, I was being trained how great my family was, that it was the second most important family in the Illuminati and the occult world, and that someday I'd be very important and so on. So I had my own heroes. If you wonder why that fits with Todd's, the Collins family changed their name about 100 years ago to Todd to cover up some of the things that they had done. But I'm sure some of you will remember the show Dark Shadows. That was the show that paid for me to come to Hollywood to bring the diaries. Many of the scripts were taken from actual instances in the diaries. And, for instance, Barnabas Collins was based upon a man named Franz Williams Collins. When I was growing up in the occult world, we were always taught that we had been somebody else before. It wasn't good enough that we were the person we were now. We always had to be a dozen people that we were before. We had to deal with this life and all the ones we were supposed to have had before and all the ones we were going to have in the future. And I was supposed to be in Franz Williams Collins. So I said that's who they based Barnabas on, so I wasn't exactly the nicest guy in the world. I grew up this way. When I was 13, I was taken into what is called the outer court to be trained as a priest in witchcraft. When I was 18, I was initiated a high priest. That would have made me the pastor. At the same time, I became draft exempt. I did not have to go into service, but a bunch of us smart-aleck young wizards and witches went into the Army because we felt the Army really needed witchcraft. It just couldn't get along without us. My time was almost up, so I was discharged, and the same day I re-enlisted. I asked for Vietnam, and they said because of my wounds that hadn't totally healed yet, I couldn't go to Vietnam yet, so I got Germany. Now, I had re-enlisted for 6 years, and until the time of my re-enlistment, I always thought that witchcraft was just witchcraft. There was nothing more to witchcraft than just casting spells, and that we were smarter than the Christians and other religions because we really knew who the gods were, and we were born with special powers because our ancestors had passed them down to us, and all the little stories they like to tell us. You know, many of you were raised as Christians, and I guess that's why I can't understand why some of the Christian teenagers are the way they are today. If they were raised in this glorious gospel, why they're so rebellious. I would have given anything to have been raised this way. But when you were learning the 23rd Psalm, I was learning the witches' chant. When you were reading about Moses opening the Red Sea, I was reading J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the way I grew up, and this is all I believed in, was just that there were mighty gods and we were special people. We were their priests and priestesses. Until I re-enlisted. I went to Germany, spent a month home, went to Germany, spent another month. 2 months out of a 6-year enlistment. One night while taking drugs and drinking, I shot and killed an officer in downtown Stuttgart. Now, if there's one thing that the Army does not like, it does not like its sergeants killing its officers. And as the court-martial proceeded on, and things began to look like I was going to spend the rest of my life in Leavenworth if I was lucky, one of the men that was placed in the cell with me had been scheduled to get out that particular day, so I kind of talked him in by bribing him a little that if he made a long-distance phone call for me and told certain relatives of mine that I was in trouble, he'd receive some money for it, and I'd be a lot happier. So he called collect to Los Angeles and talked to my foster mother, explained what the situation was. And I was sitting back waiting for her to get all these big witches together to cast spells on the judges and make all the officers that were trying me think I was a real nice guy and that it was self-defense and everything was going to be fine. They would just let me off. Now, that's all that I had ever been taught that witches could do. But 3 days later, my cell door opened there in the solitary. As I stepped out in the light for the first time in 32 days, I heard some very strange words. You are honorably discharged from the United States Army. And the man that was saying them was a senator by the name of William Saxby. He had a congressman with him named Wiley and about 3 or 4 generals, and they were handing me an honorable discharge. And on the discharge papers, it didn't say I was bad, didn't say that I had been in jail, didn't say anything. It gave me all my time and rank, security clearances that I had in my possession, and didn't explain why I still had over 5 years to go in the United States Army. It just discharged me honorably. So I took it and didn't want to argue with him and left and went back to the States and arrived at my home in Columbus, Ohio. I asked my real mother, I have 2 mothers, foster mother and a real mother, I said, what type of spell is so good that it makes senators and generals do what you want? And it's a really good spell. I'd like to learn it. She just looked at me and said, you just don't understand, do you? She said, we didn't cast a spell on them. They're with us. I said, oh, far out. Senators that are witches. She says, no, they just belong to us. And I didn't understand what she's saying. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do now? You know, I'd like to take my old coven back over and so on. So she handed me an envelope that had been waiting there. She'd explained that there was one there and one in Los Angeles. They didn't quite know where I was going to show up. I opened the envelope. Very intriguing thing. $2,000 in $100 bills. A lot of money. Also was a one-way plane ticket to New York City. I said, well, what's this for? She said, well, you make a reservation, you get on the next plane, you get out of here and you get to New York City and they'll meet you at the airport. I said, well, who are they? And where did this money come from? She says, you get there and they'll tell you and you'll know who's supposed to meet you when you get there. Now, witches are very curious people, and this was extremely intriguing. So I got on the plane and I flew to New York, and I got off the plane. Sure enough, no problem with recognizing who met me. I'd read his books for years. In fact, he's the man who first created Christian witchcraft. His name was Dr. Raymond Buckland, head of the anthropology department, Columbia University. At that time, he isn't now. Graduate of Oxford University, Rhodes Scholar, handpicked by the Rothschilds to lead the Illuminati for him. So I arrived, and he took me to his house, and next few months he carefully rearranged all my ideas for me. He told me that all the things that I had learned about witchcraft were just stories that we told the lower people. And where I thought there was only 3 levels and I was as high and as powerful as a witch could go, he assured me there were 3 more. I guess I should have backed off then, figured if I was lied to the first time, maybe I'd be lied to the second time. But as I said, witches have an incurable curiosity. They've got to find out everything. So I let him train me, and he explained to me that since I was a Mel Collins, I was in the Collins family, that I had a position to take. and that there was a board of directors called the Grand Druid Council, which contained 13 of the most powerful witches in the world, and that my place was on that council. And I said, oh, great. When do I take it? And he said, well, somebody just died. I kind of always wondered if he died or they shot him or something. You never can tell in the Illuminati. But he sent me to Los Angeles. I studied for 6 more months with my foster mother, holding kind of a temporary rank on this council, and then taking up to Colorado Springs and initiated. And I do believe that when I testified here at the last time, I explained who the person was that handed me the ceremonial knife for that ceremony, another senator named George McGovern.
Being a famous Collins, John was later kidnapped, and many attempts to restring his Pinocchio programming were tried.
There are no strings on me.
When they failed to turn his mind back into a puppet, he was murdered and at last found peace. He held on, despite his torture, because he finally understood what the Lord meant when he said, ultimately all they can do is take your life, and then they can take no more. Many have escaped when their spirit mind cried out to Jesus. The occult knows this, and so they work hard to attack all forms of Christianity and to attach to their own whenever these go to church for a break. The elites are caught in a conundrum, because sometimes their victims need an escape to maintain their sanity, but if they discover that it really can be an escape, they might not come back. We'll have more on this. Some of the Todd family, and some of the Bush family, and some of the Crowley family are subsets of the Collins bloodline. Why would an ancient famous occult family go from Collins to Todd? Todd is a Middle English word from Northern England that means a fox. In British witchcraft, a fox is equal to the number 666, or an antichrist. So, it fits perfectly. If you can no longer be a Collins, you can always be an antichrist. We'll have more on this. The Van Dien bloodline. The Van Diens came to America with the Dutch West India Company to live on Manhattan Island. They remained when the British conquered New Amsterdam and renamed it New York. The Dutch had been experimenting with a Luciferian principle, the corporation. Lucifer loves corporations, since it's analogous to his demonic concept of serial immortality. New Amsterdam and New York were very lenient to witches, drugs, and the occult. It was not long before those witches living under Puritanism in Massachusetts found safe haven on Manhattan Island. It appears that the occult Van Diens are primarily centered in intelligence operations for governments, so they can easily share vast amounts of information with the rest of the 13. They are also active in Planned Parenthood.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
It is also understood that they are the leaders of the Great White Brotherhood and the Societies of Lucifer, who joined the Illuminati to consolidate the Dutch, Flemish, and Belgium blood. What most Americans today do not understand is that after the American Civil War, the United States was forced to create a corporation in order to take a loan from the Bank of England. Eventually, all Americans wanting to use American-based currency from this loan were required to become an employee of this corporation.
Rule, Britannia, Britannia, rule always.
It is a little more complicated than that, but not really. Your Social Security number is, in effect, your employee number within this corporation today.
Britain never, never, never shall be saved.
This is all based originally in the Luciferian concepts of corporations, as being a separate entity that in effect functions as Legion does when possessing a single human body. Some of the Hearst family bloodlines are Van Diens. We'll have more on this. The DuPont bloodline. The DuPonts are the culmination of the French bloodlines into the Illuminated 13. Being worth billions, they have used their wealth to create their own family mythos. Another rags to riches lie. A perfect example is the life and death of Alfred Victor DuPont. On May 16, 1893, the news reported that Alfred, known to friends as Fred, died. The family printed the story that they wanted known, including lots of praise for Fred's many acts of philanthropy, which he did. Remember the occult law of karma. If not for the truthful story as reported in the Cincinnati Enquirer, we might have never known the truth. What really happened is this. Fred and his nephew Coleman loved women. They spent many hours in Maggie Payne's very expensive whorehouse. While Fred was very generous with public institutions that could praise him publicly, he didn't have a single dime for any bastard children, nor his mistresses. So one of his destitute, impregnated prostitutes shot him in the chest. His nephew took his body to one of their estates and paid a coroner to write on the death certificate that he had died of a stroke. Many years later, other editors-in-chief of American newspapers admitted that they knew the truth, but wanting to protect the DuPonts, printed the story that they requested they print. The DuPonts helped start the New Christian movement that later merged with communism's One World Zionist movement. One of the goal dates for the New World Order was set at 2000 AD, the sacrifice of which was to be 2 huge phallic columns, symbolic of Solomon's at the temple. Many say that this was realized with the fall of the Twin Towers in New York. They believe that the fall would bring forth Apollyon. More on that later. They listed, back in the 1800s, that in order to accomplish this, before the year 2000, they needed to make the Earth smaller by digging 2 canals, the Suez and the Panama, build a high dam on the Nile to revive Egypt and her eminence, that some form of technological transformation was needed to bring sickness and a new androgynous race of humans to the Earth,
I don't like you either.
And that all of these would be pushed forward by violence in the form of national revolutions
Par la guillotine.
or world wars. The DuPonts also pushed forward Plato's occult plans and helped the world re-embrace old pagan ideas to compete with and otherwise replace what they saw as Roman-style Christianity. These helped morph Christmas, Easter, Halloween, and even St. Patrick's Day and Valentine's Day to the silly mess we play with today.
Here comes Peter Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail. Hippity, hoppity, happy Easter Day.
These ideas resonated with young Americans such as Thomas Jefferson, who were eager to be done with the filth of self-righteous kings who claimed to gain their thrones from God. One must remember that the Illuminati will use anyone that they can to further their agendas and will only give them as much information as they believe they can handle to get the job done. There is no doubt that powerful Illuminates saw the American Revolution as useful to their higher goal of creating a one-world Zion communist government with themselves at the head. They were deeply disappointed when George Washington refused to be their king puppet.
There are no strings on me.
After the British crown had been removed from the colonies. They were thrilled when Washington realized that in order to protect the American independence, we would have to make a pact with their Bank of England, the same that controls the Federal Reserve ultimately today. Washington did it to buy us time. When he retired, he begged the American people to keep out of foreign entanglements. He meant the Illuminati, which back then was also called Jacobianism. Using real Luciferian magic, let's warp speed back in time and hear George tell us himself. But first, we will have to hypnotize and drug you. It is now October 24th, 1798, and we are in Mount Vernon, Virginia, in the presence of George Washington, where he said, and he really did say,
"It was not my intention to doubt that the doctrine of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacobism had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more satisfied of this fact than I am."
Are you starting to understand how it works and how they program us? They were tasked with infiltrating all Masonic lodges, indoctrinating them into the Illuminati. This is the warning that George Washington was trying to give to his Masonic brethren in the United States. Sadly, Alexander Hamilton, whose role in the conspiracy to return America to Illuminati British control is now known, was DuPont's lawyer in the U.S. He was the one to push debt on the American people as a means of,
"We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Follow the yellow brick road, 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 follow the yellow brick road."
Today, far too many are taught to leverage debt to build the American dream. It does work, but what they don't understand is that the ultimate goal is to use legal debt to legally seize all American assets. This is the ultimate plan of causing the United States to run up outrageous debt to the Federal Reserve so as to bankrupt the country. We have put this off by using our national parks as collateral that can be legally seized if we default, which of course is the plan. When we do default, the occult plans to place Prince Harry-less Butt Windsor as Duke of America, which is why he has been sent among us to be seen as one of us who is disliked by the crown. Don't you believe it?
Rule Britannia, Britannia, rule the waves. Britons never, never, never shall be slaves.
More on this, we promise. Some Ball bloodlines and Gardner bloodlines are subsets of the DuPont bloodline. The Onassis bloodline. Aristotle Socrates Onassis was an Illuminati king and shipping tycoon. It is said that he went from being totally broke at age 21 to being a multimillionaire at age 23, and not long after, one of the richest men in the entire world. There we go again, yeah sure. More mythos designed to teach children that if they work hard and follow the yellow brick road, they too will cha-ching from rags to riches.
What's this world coming to? You work all your life to get money, and people want you to give it away.
Aristotle was a very intelligent, ruthless, hard man. He was a true man of the world. He spoke at least 5 languages with enough fluency to manage his own business affairs. When he wanted to expand his shipping business by taking over Howard Hughes's California empire, he offered Hughes a fortune to buy him out. Howard refused. Howard was a bisexual who had proclivity for young boys. Hollywood insiders say that he and Walt Disney occasionally shared young actors.
Oh boy!
When Onassis ordered Hughes to sell him several patents, and Howard refused, Onassis had him murdered and used one of Howard's 2 doubles to play Hughes as an eccentric living as a recluse in the Desert Inn in Las Vegas. Insiders in the know hinted at this, as well as other Illuminati secrets, in the James Bond movie.
Diamonds are forever, forever, forever. Diamonds are forever. forever, 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 forever.
One of the highest honors in Satanism is the successful fulfillment of the Judas Clause.
This is your hour, Judas. Oh, Master. You betray your Master with a kiss.
The Judas Clause is the successful betrayal of a friend, particularly when one is able to benefit from that friend's death. The open knowledge of this clause in the ranks of the cults of Lucifer means that only the foolish trust their own comrades implicitly. This creates fear in the general membership, and as previously explained, fear gives demons power. We mention this here because the occult says that the Onassis bloodline played a hand with the Collins bloodline in killing JFK so as to betray and gain the power of the Kennedy bloodline into their own. It is said in the occult that after JFK's murder, his brain was taken by the Collins clan and made into a pharaonic soup for young Daddy Bush and Onassis to eat.
Chilled a monkey brain.
If you doubt it, do an internet search for George Herbert Walker Bush speaking at Gerald Ford's funeral and snickering for some odd reason when he starts to talk about the murder of JFK. Here is the audio of it, but you really need to see his face to understand the full message here. It's a joke to him.
After a deluded gunman assassinated President Kennedy, our nation turned to Gerald Ford and a select handful of others to make sense of that madness. And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but the Warren Commission report will always have the final definitive say on this tragic matter.
The occult believes that one can gain tremendous power by eating the brain of a king. It is true that Daddy Bush became president in his own right, and of course Onassis did get JFK's widow. Who can say? It is also a fact that JFK's brain went missing, to the great surprise of his family, who later admitted that they had not requested it as a keepsake. We will explore more in Part 3.
Still lost, you know.
I simply must get out.
But you are outside.
What?
See for yourself.
Why, that's me. I'm asleep. Please wake up Alice. 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 Oh, for goodness sake. Alice, Oh, well. Come along. It's time for tea.
Are you beginning to see how these 13 have used the concept of the American dream to try and change us from being a nation built on Christian principles to a nation obsessed with the concepts of consumerism? So much of the Disney morals teach this in one way or another.
There must be more than this provincial life.
Well, there can be if you are willing to imagine a dragon and sell your soul to it. More to come. Fair use claim. We are claiming fair use for the items in this podcast in which we do not own the copyright. United States law allows us to use items copyrighted by others in this podcast without their permission in the manner that we have under fair use. American courts have ruled that using another's copyrighted items in this manner is crucial when commenting and illustrating subject matter. Otherwise, news and commentary in the public discourse would be hindered, which is a violation of our constitutional rights, including our freedom of speech and freedom of the press, etc. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Master's Mayhem will return.
You are now listening to the Masters Mayhan podcast. Episode 15. The 13 Illuminati Bloodlines Continued. Part 3. This episode may be deemed inappropriate for some listeners. If you have been abused or are a minor, you should stop now. This episode builds on the previous ones.
Abuse is a grievous sin. Any kind of abuse of women, children, or anyone is an abomination to the Lord. Those who perpetrate these hideous acts are not only accountable to the laws of man, but will also face the wrath of Almighty God.
I have faith that the Constitution will be saved by the righteous citizens of the United States who love and cherish freedom.
In coming days, we will see the greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. Between now and the time he returns with power and great glory, he will bestow countless privileges, blessings, and miracles upon the faithful.
Let's continue with our exploration of the worldwide 13 hand-mentored satanic bloodlines using the Springmeier genealogical classifications by stepping into the darkness, or as some Luciferians trigger, I'm going to get you, my little pretty.
Welcome to Pedophile Dramas. Today's revolting episode, I'm Going to Get You My Little Pretty, features the enormous Dick Cheney.
And is brought to you by former program presidential sex toy Kathy O'Brien.
I hear him. He's coming.
Oh no, not the hourglass game again.
Are we ready?
Please don't make us watch your stupid hourglass and scare us to do what you want.
We're tired of your sick games.
We're now in a very, very dangerous situation where if you don't do what I want for you to do, then the meat axe falls.
Not the meat axe.
I'll get you, my pretty.
The Rockefeller bloodline. In the United States, one of the most ominous of the 13 is the Rockefeller bloodline. And surprise, surprise, we have another rag to riches. The two most prized resources of Mother Earth are her poop, which we call crude oil, and her poppies. It is from these that the original concepts of sorcery were developed: alchemy and pharmacy. Today, we call the more correct concepts learned from these science. But to the ancients, these were magic. They still see it this way, and in fact, there is still more in science than modern man wants to admit. The easiest examples of this are Darwinism and Pasteurism, more globally known as Pasteurian germ theory. It is interesting to note that both of these theories are today being proclaimed as facts without any facts to back that up. Where some Illuminates hide behind corporations, the Rockefellers have used trusts and foundations primarily to their advantage. Actually, they have created so many that no one actually knows how many they control today. It has been estimated that these hidden trusts within secret foundations within hidden trusts amount to over 1,000 points of light.
1,000 points of light. I've spoken of 1,000 points of light.
During dream
flame and 1,000 points of light.
All the rhetoric you used to hear, the 1,000 points of light. What the hell was that, by the way? 1,000 points of light. I never quite got that one. I'm trying to say, what the hell is that? Has anyone ever figured that one out?
Due to these laws, the rich actually pay little to no taxes. It is no secret that during his lifetime, Nelson Rockefeller, and Ted Kennedy too, paid 0 taxes, even though Nelson may have been the richest man in the entire United States. They do this because they personally own nothing, but they control everything. The Rockefellers spend enormous resources in controlling education, medical education, and theological education in the United States. Here is a short example. They provide a huge share of the money that theological seminaries in the United States need to operate. They provide a large share of the money that universities need to operate. Education influences the religious values of any people. They provide large grants to various religious organizations. Their influence and control helps determine who will get publicity in the major news magazines and on television. Their influence contributes to many anti-Christian organizations being set up all around the world. They directly control certain religious groups, such as the Lucis Trust. They help found and forward agendas, such as Agenda 21 and the more concerning, now, Agenda 2030. You should look these up on the internet. One famous Rockefeller is David Rockefeller, who is said to be the man who set up and built the famous Georgia Guidestones, called America's Stonehenge, and looking rather like large 10 Commandments. They were written with the following inscriptions, which in 4 languages stated the following guidelines to help the stupider masses of mankind accomplish the following goals. 1. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Please note, today human population is around 8 billion, which raises the question, how are you going to maintain humanity under 500 million without killing 7.5 billion people?
Ouch!
2. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Isn't that what Hitler tried to do with his breeding programs in an attempt to create super white men with their improved fitness and diverse biology? 3. Unite humanity with a living new language. What the hell is that? 4. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. You mean like the Age of Reason that Napoleon and Hitler tried? 5. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. That sounds nice, as long as we get to determine what's fair and just, and it isn't pressed upon us from on high, like the communists do with their vanguard. 6. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. You mean like The Hague or the United Nations? Who picks those judges? And who is in charge of the world court? 7. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. What are petty laws? And who are useless officials? You mean like local policemen? 8. Balance personal rights with social duties.
The needs of the many outweigh
the needs of the few.
Or the one.
9. Prize truth, beauty, and love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Well, that's Platoism. 10. be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature, leave room for nature, stated twice. Since only humanity can read this, humanity is the cancer. Is this not the definition of the modern push for sustainability? The rather brilliant and controversial Jay Weidner has noted that the pseudonym of the man who commissioned these stones, R.C. Christian, is a wordplay on Rose Cross Christian or Christian Rosencrantz, the founder of the Rosicrucian Luciferian English order.
Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the waves.
This is a form of sex magic. Where the rose is the vagina and the cross is the phallus with its testicles.
Hubba hubba. Stop that.
In a sense, it is a recreation of the Egyptian Ankh. More on sex magic at another time.
Hubba hubba.
This Rosicrucian observation is collaborated in the first manifesto of the Rosicrucians, written in 1614, which states, "The word RC should be our seal, mark, and character." It was the hope of all prominent Rosicrucians that the Age of Reason would break forth and end Christianity. Remember Napoleon and the French Age of Reason? These guidestones have been vandalized many times and were at last blown up by someone on July 6th, 2022, which also happens to be George Baby Bush's birthday. We mentioned before that the felling of the Twin Towers in 2001 is said in the occult to be the sacrifice needed to bring forth Apollyon, the destroyer, and that this had been planned since the building of the structure by the Rockefellers. Before you that away too quickly, do an internet search for David Rockefeller 9/11 watch picture and see what comes up. David had wanted to be the reigning king in Jerusalem, the Prince David of Judah's line foretold by Ezekiel. He hung on as long as he could, but in the end he died, like Daddy Bush, and went the way of all the earth. Everyone dies in time. Although David did hang on buying other organs from people, and made it to the year 101. Before his death, in his memoir, cleverly titled Memoirs, on page 405, he wrote, "Some believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, a one-world government, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and am proud of it." This has always been the single goal of the Illuminati since it was founded. When speaking of the Rockefellers, it is useful to know that the occult believes in forced bastardization. They teach that the only reason that Jesus Christ gained power and eminence on earth was because he was raised by a stepfather. Fans of Game of Thrones might remember the entire, spoiler alert people, series plot about Jon Snow Targaryen.
I'm a bastard.
It's the same idea in the occult. So in order to guarantee that some of their seed gain eminence, a high wizard will breed a lowly Mary, and then have their child raised by her and a stepfather. They whisper, and we are not confirming any of this here, that Billy Clinton's true father is Nelson Rockefeller, and that Justin Trudeau's true father is David Rockefeller's friend, Fidel Castro. Who knows?
Not many Americans pay attention to Canada. The entire country could disappear and it wouldn't make the nightly news here. But we watch what's happening in Canada because it's fascinating. How could such a nice country become totalitarian so quickly? Are there lessons for us? Well, for example, a high school student in Canada has been arrested for declaring that men and women are different. Josh Alexander attended St. Joseph's High School, Catholic high school in Renfrew, Ontario. He was barred from school from the grounds for saying that God created two genders, because that's kind of a Christian precept and also common sense. When he showed up for class, police arrested him. Josh, first to you, you were arrested because you showed up on campus at a Catholic school for saying that men and women are different. Have we overstated that?
No, that's exactly what happened. They removed me from the building for the remainder of the year, and when I attempted to attend class, I was arrested and charged.
Did you point out that this is a Christian school and that this is like a core Christian idea because it's like in the Christian book, which some call the Bible?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually tried to have that discussion with my administrators, but they refused to do so.
What's your recourse legally in Canada?
Well, it's limited, of course, because our Constitution is much weaker and because there seems to be culturally and legally much less respect for individual rights and freedoms and much more interest in, government having the kind of power to do what it wants.
I mean, Fidel Castro's son takes over your country and all of a sudden it becomes Cuba? It's just shocking. Fidel Castro's son takes over your country and all of a sudden it becomes Cuba? Fidel Castro's son takes over your country. Fidel Castro's son takes over your country.
We'll talk more about forced bastardization later. Some of the Clinton, Zuckerberg, and DeGeneres bloodlines are subsets of the Rockefeller bloodline. The Merovingian bloodline. The Merovingian bloodline comes into modern public attention with Dan Brown's silly thriller novel, The Da Vinci Code. While the book made history, it also made its so-called revelation that Jesus Christ had a family sound like it was a terribly guarded secret. Yawn. The truth is that history has always known that the Merovingian clan, and today literally millions of others, are related to the family of Jesus by being either his exact descendants or that of his half-brothers and sisters, uncles, aunts, and cousins. This was never a historical secret. Today there are literally millions, and honestly maybe billions, of descendants from the Merovingian royal family. So before you get too excited, understand that you are probably a member of this bloodline in some way, and so probably is your next-door neighbor too. Anciently, everybody wanted to be a relative of the Lord in some manner, particularly after millions embraced the Christian church body and believed in his ministry as the promised Messiah to all of Noah's bloodlines. When Christianity fully embraced the Greek language over the Hebrew, the word that was used to label the close family of Jesus Christ was the Desponsine, which literally means of the family of the Master. You don't have to take our word for that. Clear back in the 3rd century, Sextus Julius Africanus, an early Christian scholar, wrote about them saying that the blood family of Jesus Christ was still alive then, openly known, and still among the people. These are not hidden secret writings. You can go and read them yourself right now if you weren't so distracted by your former high school sweetheart's nephew's cousin's latest posting on Farcebook. You know the one where he shows you how many nachos folklorico he can shove in his mouth while not expanding his waistline. Wait till he's over 40. His metabolism will slow down too. Yo quiero Taco Bell. You don't have to take Sextus's word for it either. The Bible clearly teaches of them and says that several were leaders in the church once they too accepted that their half-brother was the promised Son of God, just as their mother Mary had told them that he was. The Bible tells us that the Lord's half-brother James was an important Christian leader in Jerusalem, likely the bishop, and was killed by the Jews for his testimony. It is believed that Saul, who became Paul when he converted, assented to James's stoning. Historian Hegesippus confirms that James was executed by the Sanhedrin in 62 AD. It is believed that he was buried on Gamaliel's property after Gamaliel also converted, due likely to the testimony of Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, who were his friends and social equals. Gamaliel was one of the mentors of Saul, who converted to Paul. We also know that the Herods had the records of Jesus' personal family burned out of the civil records, not unlike Hitler did to his own in Germany. Herod wanted to remove any paper trail about the Desposini. We could talk about this at great length, but have other names to summarize, so we'll come back to this at another time. But just know that many occultists want Merovingian blood.
In tropical climes there are certain times of day when all the citizens retire to take their clothes off and perspire. It's one of those rules the greatest fools obey, because the sun is far too sultry and one must avoid its ultraviolet ray. The natives grieve when the white men leave their huts, because they're obviously, definitely nuts. But mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday, 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 out in the midday sun.
The Rothschild bloodline. The Rothschilds are one of the easiest families to write about. Their great wealth in banking and media has made them more difficult to hide. They have countered their exploits under the Luciferian law of karma. In short, this law of Lucifer says that in order to extend your power while hiding in the open, you have to balance all of your evil acts with equal acts of good. Thus, through the various good deeds done by this bloodline, they are quick to charge any attacks upon them for the evil things they do as being anti-Semitism. The Rothschild family is Semitic, but the truth is that they claim their right to rule over Israel from the fact that they descend from their red shield father, Esau. They, like the Rockefellers, have practiced forced bastardization over the centuries. We'll discuss the red childs of Esau in more detail when we discuss banking, the Federal Reserve, and the Napoleonic Wars.
For France! For France! For France!
Some of the Marx, Hitler, and Elephantis bloodlines are subsets of the Rothschild bloodline. The Russell bloodline. The Russell family came from German Jews who went by the surname Roussel. When they relocated in Scotland, they changed the spelling of it to better fit with Scottish sensibilities. When the British Crown wanted to take over control of Ireland, they pushed the Protestant Scots to become illegal immigrants into Ireland to take the country over so as to control the Irish in time. Does that sound familiar, anyone? The satanic side of the Russell family moved to Ireland, bringing the Scottish Mason Rite with them as cover. The Illuminati realized that if they could infiltrate Masonry, which was already an organized semi-secret society, they could infiltrate everywhere. The plan was rather ingenious. Since Masonic levels only functioned on a need-to-know basis, with lower tiers having to put blind trust in the tiers above them, junior members knew little to nothing about what was going on above them. Masonry functioned on the belief that they had inherited what was left of the sacred rites of Solomon's Temple. While modern Masons claim today that they don't believe that, it is important to understand that all Masons before 1930 did believe it, and emphatically. In fact, they claimed that they were all that was left of the ancient rites of Solomon. They lamented, in point of fact, that over the centuries they had lost the last great secret of those that had been passed down. And so they simply chose to call this missing information the Mahabone. Pull out the sacred Bet, and you have Mahan, Mahan, the forbidden secret. To make all this history simpler, and it's not simple, What basically happened is that the Russell bloodline, with others, founded a super special Masonic lodge blessed by the Rothschild Bank of England. Due to their great wealth and ability to make any obedient in the lodge rich, they started the rumor that they held the upper secrets. Curiosity soon killed the cat, as Masons fell for the ruse, and or wanted to believe that lodges such as these were the 4th, 5th, 9th, 13th, 33rd, 666th level of pure Masonic secrets. It works just like the Mafia. Soldiers at the bottom level move up their ranks if they please their upper-ups. If they don't, they never learn the deep and important secrets of the levels above them. Needless to say, it was not long before these illuminated Masonic lodges were in control of all the other lodges. It is said that the 33rd level of Masonic rites is today level 1 of the Illuminati. Here is the text of the last instruction given to 32nd degree Masons before some were offered the chance, for a large fee, to enter the secret 33rd level, with some occasional obnoxious, enlightened commentary to help open your eyes.
You are here to learn, if you can learn, and to remember what you have been taught. In the Scottish Rite, you will be taught that our ancient ancestors, who knew all the mysteries, left enough traces so that we today, with diligent labor and teaching, may renew them and bring them to light for your enlightenment. We now come to the great symbol of Pythagoras. Our symbols have descended to us from the Aryans, and many were invented by Pythagoras, who studied in Egypt and Babylon. In order to preserve the great truths learned from the profane, there were invented some of our symbols that represent the profoundest of truths descended to us from our white ancestors. Many have been lost as was the true word at the death of our Grand Master, Hiram Abiff. The ancient masters invented some of these symbols to express the result of deity. They did not attempt to name him, but rather tried to express their reverence by describing him as Ahura Mazda. Spirit of light.
They mean the light bringer, the bringer of light. Lucifer, Satan, is the light bringer.
They conceived the idea that Ahura had 7 potencies, or emanations. 4 of these they thought of as male, and 3 female.
LGBTQL plus, I.
I don't like you either. The 4 male potencies of Ahura, by which he governed the universe, were the divine might, the divine wisdom, the divine word, and the divine sovereignty. The 3 female potencies were productiveness, health, and vitality. Look to the east, my brothers, and behold the 7-pointed star, the great symbol of this degree.
Game of Thrones fans might remember the religion called the Seven. Here's the High Sparrow from the show explaining it.
The gods didn't abandon us in silence, but gave us their holy words to guide us, collected in the oldest and holiest text of the faith of the 7, the 7-pointed star. Divided into 7 books for the 7 aspects of God, in it we learn of the Father's justice, the Mother's mercy, the Maiden's innocence, the Crone's wisdom, the Warrior's strength, the Smith's labor, and the Stranger's peace. It is a long book.
So is George's.
every warrior carved a 7-pointed star into his body, for even that was easier than carving its namesake into his mind. Though one could perhaps argue that it wasn't the warriors, but the septons and septors, armed with the holy text of the 7-pointed star, who truly conquered Westeros. The first men had no letters, but the runes they would scratch onto rocks. No gods, but the faces they would carve into trees. But then came our holy men and women among them, bearing the very words of the gods under their arms. Trees and rocks were no match for the 7-pointed star, and most of Westeros soon turned to the faith and to its guardians, their new Andal overlords, bound together by the 7-pointed star. When those kingdoms fell to Aegon and his dragons thousands of years later, the faith remained subject only to the 7 above and the 7-pointed star below. Or so it was supposed to be. No matter. We still have the 7-pointed star. Men's will and virtue may fail, but the words never do. As men bow to their lords, and lords to their kings, so kings and queens must bow before the 7 who are one. The knees of the powerful work the same as the knees of the weak, and were given to all for the same purpose, to bend before the gods, or break in the bending.
4 males, 3 females in one. Did you hear all the Illuminati buzzwords in this mythos? Let's continue.
With the 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 colors and 7 points represent the 7 potencies of Ahura.
You mean the 4 males, Father, Warrior Smith, and the Stranger? And the 3 females, the Mother, the Maiden, and the Crone? See how they pre-program us?
Observe now the great delta of Pythagoras, consisting of 36 lights arranged in 8 rows to form an equilateral triangle. The light at the apex of the delta represent Ahura Mazda, source of all light. This represents the 7 remaining potencies of Ahura. The right angle triangle of 3 lights around the altar represents the famous 47th proposition of Euclid, or the Pythagorean theorem, which is used to conceal and reveal philosophical truths. The real significance of the cross is that of Ahura and his 4 male emanations emanating from him.
Warning, bullshit alert!
The 4 animals of the prophet Ezekiel represent these same 4 male emanations.
Bullshit detected. Take precautions.
Man, the divine word, the eagle, divine wisdom, the bull, divine might, and the lion, divine sovereignty. Every equilateral triangle is a symbol of Trinity, as are all groups of 3 in the lodge, as the sun, the moon, and their worshipful master, and the sacred and mystic symbol AUM of the Hindus, whose origin and meaning no one here knows.
Now note, they say that no one knows the meaning, and now they will proceed to tell us the meaning that nobody, including them, knows.
The great trinity of the Aryans was symbolized by the adepts. Among the Hindus, it is symbolized the supreme god of gods. The Brahmins, because of its awful and sacred meaning, hesitated to pronounce it aloud, and when doing so, placed a hand in front of the mouth to deaden the sound. The trilateral name for God is composed of 3 Sanskrit letters. The first letter A stands for the Creator, Brahma. The second letter U for Vishnu, the Preserver. The third letter M for Siva, the Destroyer. AUM it is, ineffable, not because it cannot be pronounced, but because it is pronounced All these things, which you can learn by study, concentration, and contemplation, have come down to us from our ancient ancestors through Zarathustra, or Zoroaster, and Pythagoras. You have reached the mountain peak of Masonic instruction, a peak covered by a mist, which you, in search for further light, can penetrate only by your own efforts. Now we hope you will study diligently the lessons of all our degrees, so that there will be nurtured within you a consuming desire to pierce the pure white light of Masonic wisdom.
In other words,
And before we let you go, let me give you a hint. And that is all that the greatest mystics ever give. The hint is in the royal secret.
Oh, boy!
It is there that you may learn to find that light. Yes, brothers, the hint is in the royal secret.
Pay very close attention to this secret.
The true word, man, born of a double nature, of what we call good and what we call evil, spiritual and earthly, mortal and immortal, finds the purpose of his being only when these two natures are in perfect harmony.
This is the Luciferian law of karma. Lucifer believes that his greatest contribution to humanity was the knowledge of good and evil that he gave to our mother Eve first, and then to our father Adam. He makes it very clear that one cannot be whole unless one learns to sin, and that sinner embraces the sin with one eye shut. He calls this harmony. It's the same that the Lord calls being neither hot nor cold. Lucifer's obvious goal is to get God to spit you out of his mouth, yuck, and into hell.
One time, we successfully mated a bulldog with a Shih Tzu. Yeah, we called it a bullshit.
Harmony, my brethren, harmony is the true word and the royal secret which makes possible the empire of true Masonic brotherhood.
These set up many recruitment clubs for kids, teens, and young adults that were established to help groom youngins for the natural progression into the satanic branches of Masonry, one step at a time. The Russell bloodline helped organize all of these in some manner. The De Molay Society,
oh boy,
the Job's Daughters, the Owl and Key Club, the Skull and Bones Society, among others. The Russell bloodline has been prominent in leadership and or founding roles with the York Rite of the Masonic Knights Templar, the Pony Express, the Irish Theosophist Lodge, the Lodge of the Golden Dawn, the Lodge of Isis, the Royal Society of Edinburgh, the India Matras Masonic Club, the Fabian Society, and the Jehovah's Witnesses. Once again, we state that it is unfair and inaccurate to assume that everyone who bears the name of an Illuminati bloodline is a member of the organization. Perhaps the Simpsons said it best.
You're like a flower that grew out of a pot of dirt.
Now we still have 3 more bloodlines to explore. What, you cry? If you have been paying attention and are not a product of America's new math as taught to our poor children in our public schools, that is, you would say that you told us there were 13 bloodlines, and we have explored 13. So how can there be 3 more? 3 plus 13 is 16, not 13. Unless you use new math and are one of those children who can't be left behind, then maybe it works. All we can answer is that you're too smart for your own good, and that it's always the smart ones who go to the guillotine first. We will explain this conundrum in our next episode, when we finally keep our promise and discuss the Judas Clause. Then we will also better explain this recent confession.
Okay guys, the time has come. I'm just gonna break it quick, clean, get it done with. Doesn't matter that I signed a blood oath. Doesn't matter anymore. The Illuminati's real. I'm a member. It's how Imagine Dragons got famous. I'm tired of the politics. This puts me at great risk putting this out here and telling you guys this, but I believe in full honesty, and Beyonce's not talking, Chris Martin, nobody's saying a word, so there it is, there. I'm going to give you all the details as quick as I can. The President, Elon Musk, Vice President, Harry Styles, Treasurer, Beyonce, Taylor Swift is historian, and that's all I know. That's all I know.
Back through the water curtain. Rationale for fair use of copyrighted items used. Fair use law allows fair use when copyrighted material is being used to make a specific educational, research-based, scholarly, and/or critical comment on the work being used. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Masters Mayhan will continue. You are now listening to the Masters Mayhan podcast. Episode 16, The 13 Illuminati Bloodlines, Part 4, The Last Three, or the Judas Clause. This episode may be deemed inappropriate for some listeners. If you have been abused or are a minor, you should stop now. This episode builds on the previous ones. The Illuminati like the number 13 for several reasons. The most important reason is that it is the ancient mystical number of rebellion. It was in the darkness of a Friday the 13th in the secular calendar that heaven's angel of death killed all the firstborn of Egypt. It is the true number of Israel's children if you add his daughter. She would later marry into the royal house of Esau. It is the true ancient number of Christ's leadership. 12 apostles plus 1 Lord. All of these examples speak of change or rebellion to the current system, whether Egypt, Mayhanism, paganism, or British imperialism. You'll remember that 13 united colonies broke the back of the most powerful empire of the day, the Red Dragon of the so-called United Kingdom.
It seems such a shame when the English claim the earth.
While we did humiliate them for a time, they have been working actively to rein us back in since the American Civil War. Here's how.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
Now, this isn't where I was born. I was born in Kenya.
Unless we take the action necessary and we build in a greener and more sustainable and more inclusive way, then we will end up having more and more pandemics and disasters from ever-accelerating global warming and climate change.
Wise leaders always put the good of their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots.
We will never let radical socialists destroy our economy, wreck our country.
Here in Israel, they're making this green passport where the population cannot get into theaters or malls or all sorts of things. They're creating a medical apartheid.
There would be an enormous economic collapse prior to the revealing. The stock market would destabilize. It would make the Great Depression look like Sunday school.
We have 3 more Illuminati bloodlines to discuss. So how is that possible? 13 plus 3 is more than 13 blood-sucking adrenochrome addicts, right? If Satan wants there to be 13, how can there be 16? How does that make any sense? Do I really need to say it again? Have you already forgotten what I told you to remember? No, not that. Lucifer is a schizophrenic. But he gets around his math problem with the Judas Clause.
This is your hour, Judas. Oh, Master. You betray your master with a kiss.
Let's continue with our exploration of the worldwide 13, or is it now 16, new math, hand-mentored satanic bloodlines by stepping into the darkness, or as some Luciferians trigger, I'm the master who pulls the strings that make you dance and trance and sings.
I had strings, but now I'm free. There are no strings on me.
Wake up, puppet boy! Wake up, puppet boy! Wake up, puppet boy! Wake up, puppet girl!
Do you believe in that stuff? Astrology?
Yes, I do.
To what extent?
I have my astrological chart done and I read my horoscope every day.
Wake up, puppet girl!
Creationism.
No one was ever a monkey. Everything is what it was and always will be. God put us here and that's that.
Wake up, Fauci boy!
I should be prosecuted.
Wake up, Morgan boy!
Why can't I identify as a black lesbian?
Wake up, Tucker boy!
The 2020 presidential election was not fair.
Wake up, Fox News girl!
The CDC is now saying there has been enough cases of people who have had the vaccine and then suffered a stroke.
Wake up, puppet world!
Yes, you dance to my tune, little wooden boy.
Lucifer uses fear as faith in his kingdom. He knows that people act out of fear, just as he knows that people act out of faith. Just as faith and trust go hand in hand, fear and distrust, paranoia and betrayal, keep fear alive. Fear is a form of chaos, and Lucifer loves chaos. He is not the god of life, nor is he the god of order, although he does have a method to his schizophrenic madness. Any Luciferian wanting the highest praises possible from their master demon can do no more greater evil than the Judas Clause. The Judas Clause is the act of openly betraying someone within your inner circle who has put their full faith and trust in you. It is very similar to the third principle of satanic human enslavement we discussed in episode 8, To Have No Wish or Hope. So the child will be taught the full shattering effect of betrayal at an early age. This open knowledge of betrayal is part of what makes the act so hideous. It's one thing to betray a friend stupidly. It is quite another thing to betray him with full knowledge of the hurt involved, and with full premonition. The highest damnation possible in the occult is the ultimate desire that Lucifer has for everyone. The final step at the end of every single satanic
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow, 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 follow the yellow brick road.
is to cause a son or daughter of God to proclaim to God's face that they would betray and crucify the Son of God a second time if only they could. In the law books of heaven, this is called denying the Holy Ghost, since it is the Holy Ghost who certifies reality before the throne of God. The Luciferians call this denial taking the 30 pieces of silver. It is the highest offense and is the one that makes a child of God into a son or daughter of perdition. It is an act that is knowingly done, and so it is unforgivable. It all begins with the Judas clause. The Bible talks about earthly kings and how some of them would reign for a season, while others would be cut off.
Par la guillotine. For press!
Luciferians, like all pathological narcissists, think that since someone said something, it must have been said about them.
Son of a gun.
Everything is about them.
You had one eye in the mirror as you watched yourself carve out, and all the girls dreamed that they'd be your partner, they'd be your partner, and you're so vain. You probably think this song is about you. You're so vain.
So some of the bloodlines of Satan conspired to fulfill prophecy with the Judas clause. In short, it is believed that the Collins and Onassis lines conspired to kill off the Kennedy line via the Judas clause and gain the praise of Lucifer. They also believed that the Kennedys betrayed them by weakening the British-owned Federal Reserve with silver treasury certificates and calling out the cabal publicly, although not by their name.
There is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means.
It also appears that later the Onassis line was overthrown. Some have said by a new line wanting a seat at the table. It is known that the blood of the Merovingians has become so intermingled that today basically anyone who has family ties into any of the European noble family lines has Merovingian blood. Note to you, my listener, I'm talking about you, probably.
No.
Mr. President, can I share with them about what the rabbi gave to you? I think it's special. Since you're Jewish, you understand.
I love you, Christians. I'm not Christian.
The Messiah. So the head rabbi of Israel and Israel, they took the president Donald Trump, his name, and they came out to the same lettering as the Messiah. So it's a very special thing that they have it over today.
So my father.
It's the same number, you know. It's amazing how it's count, you know.
Perhaps it is no accident that the numeric value of Donald Trump in Hebrew is the same as Messiah, son of David, Mashiach ben David, 424.
The Merovingians were desposine. So you, too, when you betray the Son of God, are just like Judas Iscariot, betraying family.
With a kiss.
So, a new subset was needed to gain exclusivity. You can't teach a moron that he is special, regardless of your hairy butt brother.
Hey, I wax. What of it?
Or your father's crown.
It seems such a shame when the English claim the earth. Mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun.
If you are not taught to believe that somehow you are above the rest of humanity's worthless, hairy-butted masses.
I said I wax my ass.
In shorter words, by the 1960s, there were 3 holes in the official 13 bloodlines, and so 3 new bloodlines were needed to fill their round table.
I count the spiders on the wall. I count the cobwebs in the hall. I count the candles on the shelf. When I'm alone, I count myself. Oh, yeah.
We are not in any position to know if these rumors are perfectly accurate. You can never tell with the schizophrenic overlord. But According to the Springmeier satanic bloodline classifications, here is what is said sometimes behind closed doors. The Disney bloodline. It is believed that the Disney bloodline replaced the Merovingian bloodline. Now do all the Disney fantasy castles and every racial princess flavor of the month suddenly make sense? At least Pocahontas was a real princess. Well, we know that Walt Disney did their bidding, at first to keep them from openly shaming him, after he was compromised and blackmailed by actor Spencer Tracy at a male brothel.
Oh boy!
He did later die as an Illuminati member. How high he rose in the organization is not openly known, but he did actively promote the Masonic Demole Club for boys.
Oh boy!
And when he was unable to get American youth to care about that, he formed the Mickey Mouse Club instead.
We play fair and we work hard and we're in harmony. M-I-C-K-E-Y M-O-U-S-E Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse!
Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse!
Who's the leader of the club that's made for you and me? M-I-C-K-E-Y M-O-U-S-E Mickey Mouse.
It was this that both Bimbo creator and Disney rival Mac Fleischer and Stanley Kubrick tried to say without saying. Do an internet ogle search for Bimbo's Initiation Cartoon.
Wanna be a member? Wanna be a member?
No.
And note the mouse who tricks poor innocent Bimbo by locking him in. These men knew what Kirk Douglas learned when he tried to go up against Walt for a contractual slight. You can't sue a god, he said. We have said before that Walt was difficult for the occult to manage. In fact, so much energy and money has been spent on his personal mythos that most people have no idea that Walt was less than perfect. He is animated today as the perfect American with a Christian heart who only wanted to give the world wholesome family entertainment. His critics have repeatedly pointed out that his canon of holy work does not match his stated desire. This isn't to say that you shouldn't enjoy a day at a Disney park, but it is to say that if you swallow the entire pineapple whip, believing it to be organic, you will be ingesting nothing but the lie of frothy chemicals.
All together in the tiki 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 room, in the tiki 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 room. All the birds sing word and the flowers croon, in the tiki 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 room.
It's also a bitter pill to swallow to pay the entrance fee and then have the park close down at 6 p.m. to save their billionaires money and get you to come back a second time just so you can ride in the Peter Pan boat after having waited 2 hours in line. Are you starting to hear it? Are both your eyes starting to open? The Illuminati ultimately won Walt over when they started a strike at his studio and then agreed to stop it in exchange for various promises. Walt had a nervous breakdown, and when he understood that between the dirt they had on him on his private life and their ability through government regulations to destroy his career and dreams, he gave in. It does appear that when after they had successfully convinced him that he was a product of forced bastardization,
I'm a bastard,
that they knew they had him. Walt struggled with same-sex attraction brought about by a sense of gender confusion due to his overbearing father. As he aged, he did take a mistress, behind Lillian's back. It is said that her name was Dolores Del Rio.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
Few millennials will probably recognize her name today, but she was one of the most beautiful actresses in Hollywood. She was Mexican, and her likeness was chosen posthumously to be one of the 4 goddesses of beauty who stand as pillars holding up the gateway to Hollywood and La Brea at the end of the urine-soaked and disgusting Walk of Fame on the West End. Bring some mace so you can get past the homeless and the Scientologists.
Dweller H.
As you make your way to see it. It really is a landmark, despite the smell. The plaque in Mexico that marks Dolores' birth house reads, "In the history of photography, there were only 2 perfect faces. One was Dolores Del Rio. Walt only did the best." There have been 2 suggestions as to how Walt had met her. Either through her gay cousin, the very sexy Latin lover, actor Raymond Navarro.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
Or through Sergei Eisenstein, the famous Russian montaginist. It's hard to say. By the time they were both Walt and Dolores were very famous. The only known picture of them together was snapped on one of their dates by a fan who wanted a picture.
Say cheese!
And didn't know about the affair, per se. When Walt's friends and business partners wanted to honor him and Lillian on a special wedding anniversary with a grand dinner, at the party, Walt got so drunk that whenever any guest rose to give a celebratory speech on their behalf, he would interrupt them with loud Those in the audience said that he made a total of himself and that Lillian was completely humiliated. The guests knew that the marriage had been rocky, but even they were ashamed by Walt's behavior. It is a much hushed fact that a high percentage of men and women with same-sex attraction end up losing it as they age. This fact was suppressed because it upplays the biblical teaching that humans have free will ultimately, and downplays that you were just born that way without any choices. Supporters of the conclusion that the Disney bloodline was coronated to replace the Merovingian line like to point out that after Walt's death, and after his brother Roy's family eventually strong-armed Walt's family out of the day-to-day business of their company, Walt's family took their fortune and bought a vineyard adjacent to the Rothschilds' sacred vineyard, Opus 1. Meaning the first work, referring to Father Noah and the night he lost Adam's first skin covering when Ham attempted to castrate him, albeit unsuccessfully. It was this moment that brought Mahanism forward into Mystery Babylon, an ancient incarnation of the Illuminati. We will yet gaze deeper into this.
O slave in the magic mirror, cross the barriers of time and space, pierce the gloom and darkness. Let me see thy face.
From all time and distance, across matter and space, your powers have summoned me to promptly show my face. What is your wish, O Master?
We have a lot to say about him, good and bad, like the Luciferian law of karma, so we will share more when we discuss Mickey Mouse programming.
Who's the leader of the club that's made for you and me? M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E, Mickey Mouse.
The McDonald bloodline.
E-I-E-I-O.
It is said that after the Collins-Bush bloodline invoked the Judas Clause on the Kennedy bloodline and ate JFK's brains to steal the manna of the king and to punish him for undermining our fiat worthless paper Rothschild-controlled British banking money system, the Onassis bloodline was later betrayed or at least burned out, and so it too needed to be replaced. It is said that the McDonald bloodline was given their seat. Who knows? The McDonald family are Scottish and were Druids. While many converted to Christianity anciently, many still practice Druidism today.
In the woods there grew a tree, and a fine, fine tree was he. And on that tree there was a limb, and on that limb there was a branch, and on that branch there was a nest, and in that nest there was an egg, and in that egg there was a bird, and from that bird a feather came, and of that feather was a bed. And on that bed there was a girl, and on that girl there was a man, and from that man there was a seed, and from that seed there was a boy, and from that boy there was a man, and for that man there was a grave, and from that grave there grew a tree. And on that bed there was a girl, and on that girl there was a man, and from that man there was a seed, and from that seed there was a boy, and from that boy there was a man, and for that man there was a grave, and from that grave there grew a tree.
The MacDonalds controlled the islands and coastal areas on the west coast of Scotland. When the Knights Templar were ordered to be murdered by the Pope and King Philip IV of France,
For France!
in part to get their vast wealth and to stop their Gnostic doctrines and satanic rituals, many fled, ultimately to Scotland, and were aided by the MacDonalds.
E-I-E-I-O!
There, these knights helped keep Scotland free from the British Crown for nearly 300 years. When the descendants of these knights, with the Jesuits and the ruling families of the Ashkenazi Jews of Europe, joined forces to create a future New World Order,
If you would like to cure the fever called life, get some relief from all the struggle and strife, the grandest medicine that I can propose is under your nose, a snake in the grass.
they gathered all of the Luciferian clans of the Great White Brotherhood and started the Illuminati on May the 1st, 1776.
Now, Daisy, will you tell us what it is, please, that the maypole represents?
The MacDonalds were important members of the Masonic Jacobin movement, the very same that George Washington warned all American Masons to stay away from. But just like his warning for us to stay out of foreign treaties, wars, and complications, we didn't listen to him, and American Masonry didn't listen to him either. Today, the MacDonald clan has members in a very interesting array of fields, and many are members of the Bohemian Grove.
In the woods there grew a tree, and a fine, fine tree was he.
Once again, midsummer sets us free.
And on that bed there was a girl, and on that girl there was a man, and from that man there was a seed, and from that seed there was a boy, and from that boy there was a man, and for that man there was a grave, and from that grave there grew a tree.
Once again, midsummer sets us free.
Did you hear the scream that was muffled by the cheers? In King Solomon's day, these screams were real sacrifices, and were muffled in the same way. In various positions of governmental leadership, they have encouraged greater collaboration with communist dictators, advised presidents and kings, headed secret medical research and human experimentation projects, been members of the steering committee for the Bilderberger Club, held seats on the Trilateral Commission, been members of the Canadian International Affairs Committees, sat on multiple Fortune 500 boards, been part of NASA's Planetary Explorer Commissions, worked on astrophysical projects to determine which frequencies from space impair human brain waves the best, been leaders in the Order of the Golden Dawn, been very active in UFO research and support groups, work and run many world intelligence agencies, worked in governmental mind control research, were consultants to the U.S. Supreme Court, own and run many banks, are powerful leaders in the stock market, and are major authors in the UK occult book publishing world. One of this bloodline subsets, the Stuart family, has many powerful members in the Illuminati. There is one male Stuart who actually has a stronger claim to the throne of England than King Chucky does. He is 11th in line as a claimant, while Chucky is only 14th. This Stuart claim is a carefully preserved secret by the media. King Chucky is of the Hanover dynasty, which is Illuminati.
Mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. Out in the midday, out in the midday, out in the midday, out in the midday, out in the midday sun.
But when this Stuart claimant was asked if he wanted to have the throne of the newly formed nation of Estonia after the success of their bloodless singing revolution in 1991, he said he was not interested. The Stuart bloodline and their henchmen have been an important part of the leadership of Freemasonry down through the centuries. Now, of course, when anyone says McDonald's, the first thought is, of course, the fast food franchise with its golden arches.
And the moo here and the moo there, here a moo, there a moo, everywhere moo, old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
All worldwide fast food establishments owe their philosophy on hospitality to the workflow which the McDonald brothers successfully pioneered in the 1930s.
E-I-E-I-O.
The corporation that grew from this has been rumored for years to be connected to Satanism. In fact, the book Satan Wants You first reported the rumor that McDonald's owner, Ray Kroc, paid tithes to the Church of Satan to help keep it going. Raymond did spend time while alive with New World Order elites and was a member of the Bohemian Grove.
And round that grave there grew a tree.
But there are two more oddities of note. Some years back, while McDonald's was growing, the U.S. government gave $40 million in public tax money to McDonald's to help them set up McDonald's restaurants in foreign countries. This money was spent under the guise of international goodwill and foreign policy, just as was done to Walt Disney in the 1940s.
Hubba hubba. Stop that.
In 1991, the total number of McDonald's restaurants in Europe alone totaled 959 restaurants. At least traveling Americans felt it was a safer place to eat if they feared any foreign gamboo.
I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves. I'd like to teach the world to sing. Sing with me. Perfect harmony. Perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a coat and keep it company. That's the real thing. I'd like to teach the world to sing. In perfect harmony. Perfectly. And I'd like to buy the world a coat and keep it company. It's the real thing.
The other oddity is so disturbing that we will just let it speak for itself. It purports to be a radio interview with Rabbi Finkelstein.
And, I know you know because I've heard it on your show before. I mean, we steal 100 to 300,000 children a year just here in this country, and we drain the blood and we mix it with the Passover bread, and then we throw the bodies into the slaughterhouses that we own, and we grind up all the bodies in the sausage and the hamburger. McDonald's is one of our favorite outlets, and the people, they eat it for breakfast, they eat their children for lunch. And, us Jews, we gotta do what we do. The most important thing to remember between you, Pastor Wickstrom, and me, Rabbi Aby Finkelstein of New York, that we both have two fathers, and so that's why we look at the world in two different ways. Doing a pretty good job right now.
Yes, you've done a pretty good job, but there's quite an awakening coming. And my father, who's not your father, my father Yahweh, who isn't your father, of course, your father is talked about by my father in John 8:44, stating that your father was Satan and that you're the descendant of Cain, who was the first murderer. And you know that's true because you teach it in your synagogue.
Well, that's true, but it's not for you Goyim to know. But right now it's too late. It's over for you white race. So that's why I'm speaking so honestly here, to bring it out into the open so that you can see it for what it is. You've been teaching the people real good, but they don't wake up, do they? You don't get a lot of followers, do they? Because you know why? They're scared of us Jews, because they don't want to be called anti-Semites, and they believe that we're the chosen people, and so that's why we can do whatever we want to do, and we can get away with it, because the white men are cowards, and we go to the synagogue all the time and have some Manischewitz and dance the Hava Nagila.
Well, that's very interesting. I understand that, but I also know the bloodletting. I know that on your Passover, which isn't mine, that a lot of little children do disappear, and I do know that, and I know a lot of police departments and agencies have been informed, but you're very open. You're very open tonight. I'm very surprised that you're talking about the bloodletting of the little children, that you put their blood in the matzpah balls, and that you eat it on sacrifice on Passover.
Well, there was a Goyim that wrote a book about it back in the 30s. I forget his name at the moment. But anyway, he wrote the book. People didn't buy the book. People don't want to listen. We've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, since down to Adam's time. We take the children of our enemy, which is the white race, and we bring them to the basements in the synagogues, where we drain the blood and watch them die there. It's very similar to how we do the sacrifices that we do with the kosher butchering, and so we do that, and then we mix it with the Passover bread, and so we eat the blood of our enemies. And the bodies, we're not cannibals, so what we do is we take those, because we can make some shekels, and we give them to the slaughterhouses. And those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why we made those the most popular thing, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the Goyim out here are really eating their children. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it. So that's your problem. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it. So that's your problem. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it. So that's your problem.
Now, some internet truth forums say that this is anti-Semitic and therefore can't be believed, since no Jew, since of course they can speak for all 16 million Jews at once, would ever do anything so horrible. I know a lot of Jews, and no, they would never do anything like this. But does that mean that no Jew would do this because the handful of great Jews that I know wouldn't do it? That's like calling all Mormons shits because Shit Romney is a mitt. Or all Catholics are Illuminati because the Jesuits helped found them. Or all ducks are Nazis because Donald is white. Or all people cursed with an Illuminati last name are occultists.
You're like a flower that grew out of a pot of dirt.
America used to be established on individual rights, but somehow we have changed that, where if you offend one bad egg, you have offended them all. The first Mormon, Joseph Smith, was once asked to describe his growing congregation. He said it best. Our people are like a basket of apples. There are some very, very good ones. But if you look at the bottom, you're going to find a few shit Romneys and Harry Reeds. Oh, no, wait, that's not right. Stupid teleprompter. He said, if you look at the bottom, you're going to find a few wormy bad ones too. Oh, well, I guess that's basically saying the same thing. The Donalds, Crumps, Stewarts, Camerons, Campbells, Douglases, Hamiltons, and Montgomery clans are believed to be subsets of the MacDonald bloodline.
Let's do them all together now. Old MacDonald had a farm. E-I-E-I-O.
The Reynolds bloodline. By 1937, the Reynolds were listed as among the top 13 wealthiest families in America. We are indebted to Mary D. Reynolds for helping us understand their admittance to the Illuminati 13. She was from the Mother of Darkness level. We'll talk about that more later. When she wanted to find treatment to undo her internal programming, she helped explain how they were granted a seat. Sadly, since she wanted her freedom, she appears to have also disappeared. We can only guess which fast food restaurant, I can't resist this, made up her last daily grind.
E-I-E-I-O.
The Reynolds made their fortunes in banking, tobacco, aluminum, and mortuary services. They are also deeply involved in occult publishing, both for the occult and for the public. The Reynolds bloodline includes some Dukes, Vanderbilts, Goulds, Drexels, Wideners, Berwins, Phillipses, Hills, Ryans, McCormicks, Bakers, Fishers, Jameses, and Morgans. The Dukes and Reynolds used tax-free foundations as a vehicle to escape taxes and hide their wealth while maintaining their financial power. Many Illuminati families also use foundations as a scheme to maintain powerful and to resist paying taxes. We have already said the controlled press builds all these up to be charitable, when most of the grants by these foundations are self-serving for the benefit of the elite. This means any survivor of satanic ritual abuse calling a hotline is going to get trapped into the Illuminati's net for catching escapees sooner or later. What is surprising is how many church organizations and governmental agencies get money from Reynolds foundations, especially those dealing with children.
I'll get you, my pretty.
Now listen to this recent confession of the lead singer of the popular band Imagine Dragons. We have already pointed out that the occult believes that they are Targaryens, or rather, the sons and daughters of the Great Dragon. In this, they imagine a lie.
Okay guys, the time has come. I'm just gonna break it quick, clean, get it done with. Doesn't matter that I signed a blood oath. Doesn't matter anymore. The Illuminati's real. I'm a member. It's how Imagine Dragons got famous. I'm tired of the politics. This puts me at great risk putting this out here and telling you guys this, but I believe in full honesty, and Beyonce's not talking, Chris Martin, nobody's saying a word, so there it is, there. I'm going to give you all the details as quick as I can. The President, Elon Musk, Vice President, Harry Styles, Treasurer, Beyonce, Taylor Swift is historian, and that's all I know. That's all I know.
Thanks, Dan. We already knew that the Illuminati are real, but coming from a Reynolds, it is useful information. But did he really put his life in danger? Or was Dan ordered to do this? Insiders say that Jim Carrey was ordered to expose them, when he basically did the same thing on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. Do an internet search for Jim Carrey's secret hand signal if you want to watch it for yourself. But here is the audio.
Is that a gang sign? Have you, Oh, like you don't know what it is. You don't know what that is. I have no idea. Well, you don't know. Jimmy Fallon doesn't know. David Letterman doesn't know. We don't know. All the comics and show business don't know what this is.
The sign he is making is the triangle with his tongue sticking through it, much like the dog fetish does. In kink culture.
Right? Yeah. What is it? Come on, Jimmy. Seriously, the time is up. People are hip to this kind of stuff. I'm here tonight to blow the lid off it, to be the whistleblower. I'm sick and tired of the secrets and the lies. It is the secret symbol of the Illuminati, and you're a part of it, and it is the all-mocking tongue.
One member of the audience in attendance said that I was surprised to see this later on television. I was there and nobody laughed. The laughter was added in later. We were all shocked. I felt like Jim risked his life to do this. Well, if this was forbidden, why just not air the episode? If you have time to cut in a laugh track, you have time to not air the episode. Jimmy didn't look surprised to me at all either. Now do an internet search for Isaac Kappy, Kappy, cannibalism list, and look at number 6. Isaac died under mysterious circumstances after he released this list. Many say he gave his life to warn us. Oh, by the way, Isaac was a Jew too. See, there are some good ones. You can't say that all Jews are Romney heads, when some give their lives for the rest of us. Unless, of course, you believe the one counts for all, and then they're all great. It is known that the Illuminati are trying to find ways to announce themselves openly so as to prepare us mammals to accept them for worship openly in the near future.
We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a great social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to all nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery, and of most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the people forced to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitudes disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will be from that moment on without direction and leadership, and anxious for an ideal but without knowledge where to send its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into public view, a manifestation which will result from a general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time.
Unless Carrie ends up a Happy Meal and Dan a McDan sandwich, you can bet that they are still following orders.
I'm going to show you how McDonald's builds a Big Mac sandwich. It starts here with a lightly toasted bun, and then a pure beef hamburger, sizzling hot, a slice of cheddar blend cheese, and some crisp, fresh lettuce. Then, our own secret sauce. The club slice, toasted, another hamburger, and a little more sauce just for good flavor, crisp dill pickles, and the sesame seed crown. This is the sandwich, McDonald's new Big Mac sandwich, for the bigger-than-average appetite.
Only time, and whether or not we ever find the body, will tell us. One of the oldest satanic tricks they use is accusing their enemy of the very thing that they are doing. You get points on your satanic scorecard for being a hypocrite in Satan's kingdom. So blaming your innocent enemy of being a sexist, racist, bigot, pedophile, heterophobe, white, Anglican, schizophrenic, conservative, unsympathetic, transsexual, misogynist, hermaphrodite, when in fact you are, gets you Lucifer points on your damnation card. He who has the most points loses his soul. Satan will not support any of his children on the final day. And he will also not pay the electrical bill to keep your cryogenic brain frozen during the apocalypse when at last the power grid goes out.
Gosh!
Back through the water curtain. The occult is run by intelligent nutjobs who follow the schizophrenic orders of their schizophrenic master. If you try and make logical sense of all of their plans, you will quickly discover that they don't make any sense in combination. So we must stress again. Lucifer knows that he is going to lose the ultimate battle, but he doesn't want you or his own to know he knows, until he can get you and them to knowingly and openly consent to the re-crucifixion of the Messiah. At the top, they know their ultimate reward. We will discuss that later. While the majority of Christians do not see their wearing of crosses in this light, Lucifer does believe that his exalting of the cross will ultimately result in the Lord's re-crucifixion. Oh well, as long as you don't wear the cross upside down, it probably won't matter.
Gesundheit.
Rationale for fair use of copyrighted items used. Fair use law allows fair use when copyrighted material is being used to make a specific educational, research-based, scholarly, and/or critical comment on the work being used. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Masters Mayhan will continue.